A wonderful morning. It is here from Nigeria, West Africa, and of course to the rest of the world. We say thank you for joining us on AM Live this morning. It's Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. My name is Olajumoke Babalola.
And I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for joining us on AM Live this morning. It is the Nigerian Baptist Convention usually has its own Mother's Day every year. Exactly. And this Sunday is the Nigerian Baptist Convention Mother's Day celebration. I think some countries have their Mother's Day. Sometimes it's the denomination, Christian denomination, sometimes it's the country. But the Nigerian Baptist Convention will be celebrating Mother's Day this year. And I know somebody will say, why the different Mother's Day? Mothers should be celebrated as
every
much
day. Exactly.
As they can, during the year. There should be a day just to decide to celebrate mothers every year. I mean, every day actually, not just for mothers. Fathers also have their day. It's just, I think Father's Day just once.
It's just once across the world. So
June, sometime in June.
Yeah.
But it's Mother's Day that different days. We're not saying mothers are more special than fathers, but we know how it works. We know how it works. But if you are, whether you're a member of the Nigerian Baptist Convention or not, whether you are in Baptist Convention in any part of the world, as it doesn't matter. Just celebrate Mother's Day with the convention on Sunday. Appreciate your mother. You might not have enough time to have done that in the past, celebration, but celebrate her now and make it a culture to celebrate her every day.
Someone says the greatest task in the world is motherhood, and of course you really, everyone would agree to that. Exactly. So whether or not you're a Baptist, it's what we're saying to you, it's not necessarily you wait until Sunday, but that you took the challenge to celebrate your mom, appreciate her, make a call. It's been a while you talked to your mom, make a call. They appreciate it more than the gift you think they would appreciate the more.
It's also a time to reconcile.
Put out time.
If you have disputes with with her or any member of your family. But I was discussing with someone yesterday. She was telling me a video she had seen of a woman who has she has 2 sets of twins. So she has 4 children, but there are 2 sets of twins, and the age difference between them is not so much. And the video showed her hiding inside the attic. She's not Nigerian. She was hiding inside the attic in her house, and she was licking ice cream. She was eating some kind of, not ice cream, but some kind of it's like, I think it's jelly. And she was saying, they just won't leave. I just want my 5-minute space. They're everywhere. I just want my 5-minute space. And people, the comment was, what kind of a mother is it? And I said, look, so it's difficult to even deal with a child. Not to think of dealing with 4 children. There are 2 sets of twins. They're always together. They move around together. She just wanted 5 minutes of her time, to pray. And I said, it's not easy. This is why a lot of women suffer trauma, in motherhood. So we have to be supportive of them. Very
necessary. And we say Happy Mother's Day, of course. It's Happy Mother's Day every day, not just some particular set-aside days. We're saying thank you for all of your efforts. Of course, we're appreciating our fathers too. You've stood strong beside them. Thank you for being wonderful people to us.
All right, now moving on to our big stories of the day. There is a report that Nigeria is now a dumping ground for substandard products, whether food, beverages, whatever kind of product. Nigeria is now a dumping ground. I don't think this is news for anybody, but this is coming from one of the ministers, and because it's coming from a minister, of course it sounds like news, but we basically knew with the kind of things, especially for drinks, which kind of drinks you find, a friend was going to buy a drink for her child some time ago, and they were different products. One of these, I think they're like yogurt kind of drinks. There were different products. She was confused. And I said, just go with the one it doesn't have to taste nice. It doesn't have to look nice. But please go with the one you know. And that's how it is across every other product.
Honestly, just a couple of months ago, precisely in February, 2 Chinese men were caught importing fake tires into the country. And of course, in March, we also saw Nigerian Customs Service intercept over 5,000 cartons of fake drugs. And well, like we all know, it's no longer news, but the Minister of State for Environment, Ibrahim Jibril, said that Nigeria has become practically a dumping site for substandard goods, fake products, inferior, expired, poisonous foods and feeds coming in from across the globe. But again, while we all know it's no longer news, we of course have some agencies such as the Standards Organization of Nigeria. We also have customs in itself. We have, of course, the CPC, the Consumers Protection Council, which are organizations coupled with the effort of the Ministry of Environment towards ensuring that what customers get access to are approved products. But again, while it's giving this information, it also puts a check on how porous our borders have become, such that just about anything gets into the country and it doesn't go through the normal process of standardization well, I'll just say what we do with this information is what matters the most. It isn't just about the release of an information by the Ministry of Environment, by the Minister of State for Environment particularly, but what we do to it. There's such increase in the numbers of persons who are falling ill due to one illness or the other.
Yeah.
Of course, we cannot negate the fact that one factor could be responsible is the fact that we've been consuming most likely very fake and substandard foods and drinks.
True. I mean, we saw recently also the imported gari from India, and this is something we have here. It is not just enough to have to say, oh, we're looking for products into the country, at least open the market up, ease of doing business in Nigeria. We must also be careful what we allow in. Like you said, exactly. Our borders are really very porous. But it's not just about the borders. People also bring in some of these products legally through the airport. Some of them will tell you they have license to bring them. So all stakeholders must be involved in ensuring that Nigerians eat the right thing. Imagine a situation where, you know, these things would have even gotten here before we realized that they're already in. We had a case of frozen fish recently. Customs also intercepted some amount of frozen fish. And these are things that have already been banned. And there's also a situation of our own product being not being allowed in Europe, some European countries, because the European Union says they have a high level of pesticide, you know, in them. So we must make our own food healthy as well, and make the food that we bring in from other countries, ensure that it's healthy. Because, like you said, there are a lot of diseases these days. You know, it's at an alarming rate. Some of the things that we used to know that, okay, you have to be from 80 or from 60 to at least start to deal with this kind of issues. Even 30s, people who are 20-something years old still are now dealing with this kind of issue. And it might not be far-fetched from what we eat. So we have to be careful the things we allow. And the minister also mentioned the fact that some ministries, departments and agencies are not collaborating to ensure that this work is done. Everybody's doing their work individually. Really, all stakeholders must come together and collaborate and ensure that what we bring in, whether it's the NAFDAC, whether it's the Standard Organization of Nigeria, Customs, the Ministry of Environment, all of them, they have to come together and work as one, have the same policies, have the same strategy, to ensure that substandard products are not brought into Nigeria.
Very necessary. And of course, while we look at the fact that today we seem to be complaining about the goods, foods and products imported into the country, you also look at the fact that some of the products we make in Nigeria are below standard. I was, over the weekend, I listened to a talk where the speaker said, right from start, it used to be from the farm to the fire and then to the table, but then it's become something different these days. It's from the farm, it's processed, and then it gets to the fire, it gets to sometimes microwave, before it gets to your belly. And of course, some of these things have also contributed to the reduction in the standard of the things that we actually take in. While we're asking that, yes, some of this product do not necessarily have to be imported. They only put across the fact that we've not paid so much attention to growing what we should eat, and of course getting them through to the table from the farm directly. So two things are in place this morning: the fact that where we should empower the agencies that are necessary that have the responsibility to check in the foods and the products that get to consumers, and of course the fact that the government and stakeholders should empower locally produced foods, such that you do not necessarily have to get the same things we produce in Nigeria imported into the country, having been kept for a long time, probably on water or probably in some cargoes. But basically, it's a call to produce it more in Nigeria, taking what we eat and checking those things that we do not produce before they get into the country.
Exactly. And there's also the fear of the use of genetically modified organisms. Those things have to be checked. We really have to ensure that what we eat is safe. And as much as we can, like you mentioned, processed food, we must ensure that processing food doesn't reduce the nutrients. It should only contribute to the nutrients. Preserve it, especially in areas of drinks. I'm even more worried about drinks, because anybody can mix anything and call it drink. For food, people know that, okay, this is how it should taste. But for drink, people just mix stuff together, put it in a can, and then sell it to you. As long as it's tasty, Nigerians don't really care. We must also begin to care more for nutrients than we care for taste. It has to be first how nutritious is this than how tasty is this, and that's what the government should work on. And NAFDAC should be enabled, Standards Organization of Nigeria, Customs, they all should be enabled to do their job rightly. We're going to take a break now, and when we return, we have more big stories for you. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching AM Live here on New Frontiers Television. When it comes to sports, you cannot, especially in Africa, you cannot undermine the role that Nigeria plays in African sports. Whether it's football, whether it's beach soccer, athletics, basketball, Nigeria does take a lot of front row in most of these sports, except maybe for rugby and hockey, which we haven't developed yet. Even for wrestling and boxing, we still do take a front row. And right now, Nigeria again is taking a front role in the in CAF, the Confederation of African Football. And Amaju Pinnick just got a new position at the Confederation of African Football, and he's going to be heading the AFCON, which is African Cup of Nations. He's going to be heading AFCON, and then the media committee for CAF.
Well, we should also mention that after the March 16 elective General Assembly of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, it's holding its first executive meeting. And of course, we're seeing Nigeria again hook up some flags, some feathers. We're not just going to be within some committee within CAF, but of course we're going to be heading the African Cup of Nations, which would mean that Amaju Pinnick would be in charge of organizing football tournaments with some other members. It's a good one for us. Really, we're seeing how much improvement we really need to come up with, especially in football. We're talking about how we're seeing some of our players do well outside of Nigeria and then do not so well at home. But again, these responsibilities isn't just on Amaju Pinnick, as it were, being the president of the NFF, Nigerian Football Federation. It's also a responsibility on the entire stakeholder within the football sports industry, if there were anything as such. Because we would need to help him fly the flags. It's been handed over within CAF and within, of course, AFCON. It should propel what position we hold in the world football ranking. It should also contribute to how much stakeholders begin to see the need to invest more in this sport. Because besides that, we should also know that Amaju Pinnick was recently appointed as one of the world's football governing body, FIFA, as its organization committee for competition. So yeah, we're holding stakes in different sectors within football. So it's a challenge not just to Amaju Pinnick, but to everyone who's got a stake in football in Nigeria.
True, it should reflect in African football and in African players. It shouldn't just, it's not enough to hold these positions, but it should do so much that we see a lot of Africans within the European League doing so well. We have some Africans in European League, but how many of them are really doing well? It should begin to reflect on how well they play, how seriously the tournament is taken in Nigeria, and then not just for AFCON alone, but because that's like a match for the big league, but also in local leagues. CAF should do so much for local leagues, whether it be the NPFL in Nigeria or the football league in South Africa, Egypt. Egypt is even thriving when it comes to football, their football league. But we have to do more for the local leagues so that they too can develop and get into the major leagues. And it's a good thing for Nigeria. It is a good thing for Nigeria to see that one of us is recognized not just within the continent but also outside of the continent. And governments again should throw their weight and support behind him. Most times when you have these kind of issues, what you have later is bickering of, it looks like, okay, you don't have the support of even the government that you're representing. But Nigerians and the government should throw their weight behind him to ensure that, he's successful in his time as, holding all of these positions. It does come back to us. If anything happens, it does come back to us. Remember the case of one of our representatives then in FIFA who had issues, and it did come back to us as a nation. So we must ensure that he does well.
We really should. And of course, one thing the government would want to pay attention to, not just necessarily for Amajapini, but within the football sport industry, is the welfare of its players, which is something they've clamored for an improvement in the welfare. And of course, we have Morale, who's been doing quite well, but not so enough. So it's basically not just going to stop at the governing council or the level of making policies at the administrative level, but it should trickle down to an improvement in the welfare of our footballs. It's a lot. It tells a lot in how much they do.
Not just for football. I think generally for sports.
For sport, yes.
We talk about diversification of the economy because we want to generate revenue and want to engage young persons when it comes to employment. One of the areas that can engage people massively is sport. For example, if I were to own a farm, I own the farm. So it's my farm, I'm farming, and it has to grow big for me to be able to employ labor. But for sports, at a time, you can take as much as 10, 11 persons for a particular sport. So it's one area that we must develop and pay attention to. Nigerians really don't want to be involved. Even those that have the skill really don't want to get involved because it looks like, well, what's the point? It doesn't pay so well. Even if I go for tournament, I won't get the recognition or the proceeds that I deserve. Most of them go for tournaments and they come back, they tell you we're yet to get our pay. So if we focus on developing sports across board, we're going to realize that a huge part of the unemployment problem will be solved. And it also now behoves on Amaju Pinnick to ensure that, because he is in the sports sector, it's a football sector, that football does employ a lot of African youths, and then especially Nigerian youths, in his tenure.
Very important. You would imagine how much we'll achieve if you would combine the patriotism with which those people commit themselves to sport with an improved welfare.
Exactly. All right, now let's take another quick break. AM Live will continue in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. The program is still AHEM Live, and of course, we've looked at some big stories. What from the Amadou Pinnick's new offices as president of AFCON, and of course, we did mention how we should improve on Nigeria's stop Nigeria actually from being a dumping site for substandard product. Now we're going to be looking at a breaking news, which is something good. Of course, Nigerians have asked for this for a long time. There's a release that finally the National Assembly would be disclosing its own budget after years of secrecy. Well, we remember that one of the things the Senate President did promise is that this would be an open assembly, such that no information would be seemingly hidden from Nigerians. So it's a good one that we're going to be seeing an open assembly, as it were. We're going to be seeing how much is allocated to the National Assembly, or how much they've included in the budget.
Yes, that promise was made in his inaugural speech in June 2015, and it took 2 years for this to happen. Over 2 years, Nigerians kept clamoring for an openness, because that speech where he said we're going to have an openness, and then there was even a committee set up to look into to ensure that the budget of the National Assembly is made open. It took 2 years for it to happen. Nigerians had hope at that time when that promise was made that, look, this National Assembly is going to be open. We've seen the National Assembly move from, in 2010, moved from a budget of 23-something billion naira to over 150 billion naira. Recently, it was on the news that the National Assembly had changed its budget from 130 billion to 150 billion, and you wonder what for. We don't even know why there was a 20 billion naira addition. We don't even know what a 130 billion was for. Not think of the 20 billion naira addition. Nigerians have always clamored, not even just for this dispensation, since the beginning of democracy, that we want to see what the National Assembly does with its budget. What is your budget like? What are your allowances? What do you earn? How much goes for allowances? How much goes for the institutions of the Assembly, both for the House of Representatives and for the Senate? And to see that this is coming up now, it's a good thing, because most times this is what people use as, a lot of leaders use as excuse. When you say, oh, so your state, when you're speaking to a governor, and you say, can we see, how transparent is your policies within your state, your budget, and all, and they tell you, even the National Assembly, we don't know their budget. It became like an excuse, like a defense. And we know that sometime in March thereabout, El-Rufai challenged again the National Assembly to make open its budget, and for this to be happening, and if this does happen, we'll find out later in the day after the plenary session. If this does happen, it will be a right step in the right direction. Very, very true, Precious. You mentioned El-Rufai actually asking them to make the budget open. How much do you? Let's know how much you spend as a National Assembly, as a body saddled with the responsibility of making laws for Nigerians. Also, in January this year, Ali Odumi had asked them to ask the leaders, let's know how much is accrued to you. We as members don't even know. We don't have that information. So it's important that you make this information open to Nigerians. And of course, you mentioned the vow, it was a vow actually, Saraki, that's the chairman of the National Assembly, made, as to changing from impunity and elite arrogance to a season of accountability. And of course, it's just true that if this happens, well, it again puts so much agitations amongst Nigerians as to how much these people get, and how much they committed to the era of change, the dispensation of change, the dispensation of accountability, and the whole fight against corruption. Because one thing is, the fight against corruption cannot be won totally if we do not have access to the true information, especially coming from the right quarters. So yes, we're saying Saraki did play through to his vows, if this actually sails through, because 6 times he's failed. His spokesperson Bankole Omisore did say was going to resign if the Senate President didn't act true to his promise. So yes, we're hoping this is not just some decision to bend to the calls from around, but out of a genuine decision to run an open assembly, because that's what matters, that you're not just bending, but that you are deciding, because you made that promise when you were taking up office, taking up responsibility to run an open administration, an open administration, an open assembly. So it would be good if Nigerians have access to this information. It again puts a check on them. It again controls how much they spend, and that you actually fulfill the promises to your constituencies. It's true, it's necessary that we have this information. And the funny thing is that, like you mentioned, Ali Dume was saying, who used to be the Senate leader, saying that, look, you make your own, let's know how much you earn even as a Senate leadership. But it's funny that even members of the National Assembly, some members of the National don't even know what the budget looks like. You know, committees are, you know, asked to submit their budget. Then there is a constituency allowance, and that's basically it. Every other thing is between the Senate leadership and the Appropriation Committee, and it shouldn't be so. Even if the members of the National Assembly don't even know, then what is the fate of Nigerians? So now it is going to be open. We then will be able to criticize. We then will be able to say and commend as well in places where we feel okay, this is the right step. The place where we also think, look, this is extravagant, we should be able to say, because it's our money at the end of the day. It's like, if the money is for Nigerians in general. So whether it's from tax, whether it's from oil revenue, wherever it is from, it is Nigerians who, you know, it is from the soil here, and Nigerians will be able to say, you're spending too much of our money, or okay, we're okay with how much you're spending because you're using them for this. So hopefully in this plenary session today, the Senate will talk about it, the National Assembly will talk about it, and then, you know, we'll get feedback much later. We're going to let you know if it is going to be open as or not, you know, after the plenary session today. We're going to take another break, and when we return, we will look at the headlines on the papers. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching AM Live this morning, and I'm moving on to our morning brief segment, which is a look at the headlines on the papers this morning. On the front page of the Guardian newspaper, the major headline reads, suspended SGF Lawal, Ikoyi Gate probe in limbo. Suspension of officials irreversible, says presidency. That report begins on the front page of the Guardian newspaper and continues on page 6 of the paper. Also on the front page, fraud allegations threaten universal health scheme. The writer says HMOs operate with expired licenses. Operators allege disruption to NHIS scheme. Nigeria records 33.7 deaths per 100,000 yearly. And if that report also begins on the front page and continues on page 6 of the Guardian. Buhari and fortune hunters, that's by Ray Ikwu on the inside pages. On News 2, Femi Kuti breaks world saxophone record. Still on the front page, Biafra is my life, says Nnamdi Kanu. You find that on News 3. On News 5, Patience Jonathan loses bid to unfreeze her account. And on News 5 as well, 37,000 Nigerians immigrated to Italy in 2016, says Laura Bodrini. And that's all for the front page of The Guardian.
And on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the major headline is, some abducted Chibok girls refused to be freed, negotiator. And the riders, released girls to undergo spiritual rehabilitation, others, says presidency. Jonathan okayed swap of Boko Haram commanders for Chibok girls in 2014, and this is coming from PDP. And above the nameplate, power firms manager award inflated contract to relatives. Fashola was the Minister of Power, Works and Housing. Reps summoned in Ngige over mass sacking by telecom firm. Page 13 has more details. Lagos Divisional Police Officer kills apprentice during raid and birthday party. That's a sad one. You have details on pages 4 and 5. Osinbajo congratulates French President-elect Emmanuel Macron. You find details on page 14. Hambade bans VIO from Lagos roads. Page 14 has more details as well. Death toll in Benue farmers herdsmen clash eats 15. Page 13 will tell more. GE donates 200 wagons, 20 locomotives to Nigerian railways. You'll find details on page 30. And finally, on the front page, workers hail Ogumodede's emergence as Vice Chancellor of the Bafemi Awolowo University. And that's on page 40. A look on the back page of the Punch newspaper, Hadamo Leko on Salvation Nigerian Universities. And this is with Nia Kinoso on Thinking With You. And that's the motto on the front and back pages of the Punch this morning.
All right, now let's look at some news headlines within the papers. The first one here says, Court affirms Wike's constitutional power to probe Amaechi's administration. Still inside the papers, reps move to summon Chris Ngige over job losses in telecom sector. NCC boss absorbs outfit of blame. WHO experts decry rate of road crashes in Nigeria. Country ranked second highest globally. Still on the inside pages, Fashola chides discourse for forming themselves into associations. CBN offers $81.2 million as parallel market remains at 391 naira. Appeal court holds special sessions in Bayelsa to clear backlog of cases. Still on news, prosecute indicted killer herdsmen to prevent reprisal. Can president urges federal government? The writer says Uni Uyo community leader give cattle rearers ultimatum to leave. 15 feared killed in fresh attack by suspected herdsmen in Benue. Ambode orders VIOs to vacate Lagos roads. Over $15 billion invested in Lekki Free Trade Zone, says state government. Okay, we've seen this on the front page, and then just look at here. Buhari's integrity led to release of Chibok girls, says Shetima. Writer says Fayose describes freedom as cheap dummy. Sheriff explains how Jonathan's swap deal was scuttled, and federal government condemns PDP's faction position. Lawyers differ on calls for Buhari's resignation over medical trip. Osinbajo congratulates France president-elect. And finally, OG seeks extension of whistleblowing to poll fraud. CLO condemns not conduct of council election in Anambra. And that's for the news within the papers.
And from within the Punch newspaper, the news column particularly, $17 billion stolen crude. Reps panel queries CBN over $81.2 billion shortfall. And moving on to the 5.1 billion naira fraud, court admits Jonathan X hate confessional statement. And still from news, okay, we took that earlier. Stop politicizing Buhari's health status. PFN, which is the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, tells Nigeria. Sage seeks harsh punishment for corrupt senior advocates of Nigeria, others. Court of Appeal dismisses Amaechi's case against Wike. And finally, 37,000 Nigerians emigrated to Italy in 2016, Italian speaker. While we get reports of people being repatriated, we're getting a report that over 37,000 Nigerians moved into Italy in 2016.
Yes. All right, now moving on to the metro section of the Guardian newspaper. Jamiu Ayode's life allegedly snuffed out by DPO's bullet. 25-year-old fashion designer Jamiu Ayode was, His life was cut short by the bullets of a DPO, you know, and well, that is it's really sad to see, you know, these kind of situations happen. Uber drivers protest against 40% fare reduction. 2 nabbed for producing fake voters cards. Still on the metro section, police boss orders manhunt for killers of inspector. Armed robbers carted away 10 million belonging to a Chinese. Outrage as suspected ritualist cuts off girl's breast. Another arrested with roasted human parts in Taraba. Woman jailed 7 years for stabbing husband to death over Baba Ijebu. Ikeja Electric decries spate of vandalism in Igondo. And that's all for the metro section.
And on to the Punch editorial. NMA plans what giving a try. And on Viewpoint, why Buhari's health and investor confidence matter. And this is by Tayo Oke. Not the Senate, not this judiciary, by Law Mefor, a forensic expert. You really want to check up on it. It sounds interesting, really, and looks sane. Nigeria must take a decision on the Igbo by Anzuka Owunka, still on Viewpoint. And finally, the corruption in Nigeria's whistleblowing policy by Sufuyan Ojeifo is seen to be finding some loophole in the whistleblowing policy. You really could check up on that. And that's the mod from those columns.
All right, now looking at the editorial letter and opinion column of the Guardian newspaper. For the editorial, ICANN and the source of Nigeria's economic failure. Also for letter, amnesty program in Rivers State. Moving on now to the opinion column. Close Apapa Port and rebuild the road. That's by Luke Onyekakeya. Niger Delta, friends or foes. That's by Pius Isikwene. Still on the opinion column. The Nigerian Communications Commission, time to wake up. That's by Patrick Dele Cole. And Obiano and Anambra's Democratic Journey by Ifeanyi Afuba. That's all for the opinion letters and editorial column.
And also Punch Business and Economy. Some power firms managers award inflated contracts to relatives. Fashola. Nigerian oil sales slow as uncertainty surrounds DSPD. Resilience of Nigerian firms commendable, and this is a statement by the FTI consulting boss. Still on Business and Economy, federal government set up committee on 200 billion naira pension debt. Government approaches IDM for commercialization of innovation. And from money, Naira eats 400 naira against $1 on CBN's investors forex exchange window. That's the mod from the financial columns of the Punch newspaper.
All right, now let's look at the law column. Fast-track procedure should be extended to matters commenced by originating summons. That's on law. For still on law, Lagos Attorney General takes over alleged murder case. Mobile court has reduced street trading traffic congestion, says Lagos Attorney General Kazim. Court restrains reps over IM's centenary city probe. ICC Nigeria launches expedited rules. CJN delivers keynote address at Lagos NBA Law Week. Hearing of application in $8.8 million alleged fraud fixed for May 23rd. Now on policy and politics. What Macron's election means for Africa. That's by Ernest Danjuma Nebi. And how EFCC should work. That's on law and governance. That's by Rotimi Fawole. And that's all for all of those columns.
And also Punch Higher Education. OAU students protest colleagues' death and bug invasion. Hajjasson Varsity dons at war over petition against Vice Chancellor. The lack of quality tutors, bane of education in Nigeria, couldn't agree any less. 20-year-old Nigeria shines in United States varsity. This is another good one. Dana Isibo, who is a 20-year-old, is doing Nigeria proud in the United States. Futa Don wins Fulbright African Scholar Varsity. And finally, studying abroad improves access to quality education.
All right, now looking at the World Report column and the health column of the Guardian newspaper, rather. French President-elect Macron vows unity. World leaders react to victory. 2 million children displaced by South Sudan famine and war. Afghan Islamic State chief killed in raid. South Korea to elect new president amid corruption, not concerns. United States to examine Syrian de-escalation zones. And that's all for the World Report. Moving on now to the health news column. First synthetic retina for visually impaired created. Oh, that's fantastic. Exercise in a pill boosts athletic endurance by 70%. Alcohol linked with higher risk of breast cancers in Africans. Women who take folic acid during pregnancy more likely to have emotionally stable children. And that's all for the health news.
And on Punch Sports this morning, Chelsea no longer my priority. Omero, who's a Chelsea defender. Viewing Center tragedy. House of Assembly wants electricity firm sanctioned. And still on Punch Sport. Ambade puts pressure on federal government over National Assembly. Mpine takes over from Ayato as the president of AFCON. And finally, okay, well, there's still something on the tragedy around the viewing center. The House of Assembly asking for further investigation and the sanction of the electricity firm. That's the mod from the Sports Punch this morning.
All right, now looking at the Guardian Sports. CAF names Pinnick president of AFCON media committees. Nigerians begin quest for glory in Dayak ITF futures. Registration begins for Abeshon Cup. Still on sports, Delta Force Warri Wolves crash out of FA Cup. And sports as well, sprinter Aguero eyes for gold medals at Delta Sports Festival. Rider says Pobeni praises Okowa for reviving games after 12 years. And on sports still, organizers confirm 15 gold level athletes for Kwekwe Road race. Arita, Juma, Gudeta lead elite cast. And finally, Mikel left out as Raw announces squad for final preparation. Home-based Ibrahim Odey Olatubosun in. And that's all for Guardian Sports. That's all for the Morning Brief segment this morning. We'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll look at specific headlines within the papers.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with AM Live. And now we're going to be looking at some particular stories from within the papers. And the first will be taken from the Punch newspaper, which is something around University of Uyu's Vice Chancellor telling Earthmen to withdraw cows from the university environment. And while we've looked at the activities of Earthmen and the much trouble it caused, not just in Uyo as a web, but of course across Nigeria, it doesn't look like so much information has been passed to this set of people, or probably they do not understand the context of the information being passed across to them. Because we're seeing them cross boundaries. It used to be just they're invading farmland, their cows eating up farm product. But we're seeing them even getting into university environments. And it means while we've made clamors for probably an establishment of a ranch for those people or some particular location where the cows can feed upon, it doesn't still look like we're backing up, or there's a legislation backing up all of these agitations, all of these calls for the creation of some ranch for cattle rearers. But again, the Vice Chancellor said it looks absurd that you would have cows invade a university environment, and of course you're wondering, exactly said, for the sake of peace, is giving them a couple of days from April 28 to May 11, some time to move the cows out of the school environment. But I would say it only tells us we should make for so much probably some more legislation to ensure that herdsmen do not cross their bounds, and that there are particular locations set aside for them in Nigeria, just as it is in some other parts of the world.
Exactly. I agree with you on the fact that herdsmen should not be made to pass the bounds, especially when it comes to the university environment. I mean, that's almost like a sacred environment, if we want to see it that way, because it's a learning environment, and you shouldn't have cows, you know, within that environment. And well, there's also a report here by the Guardian newspaper saying that the current president, who is also the president of the Nigerian Baptist Convention, Reverend Dr. Shugba Ayokele, saying that government should prosecute indicted killer herdsmen to prevent reprisal. We have had a lot of cases in Nigeria when it comes to killings, but usually whether it's extrajudicial killings, whether it's religious killings, you know, or even ethnic killings, one of the things we hardly see is that people are being prosecuted. And when people are not prosecuted, one of the things people look for is justice. When you have lost something, when you have lost someone, you know, it's not that it's not vengeance. Most times it's just justice. And when it looks like government is not giving you justice, people want to take laws into their hands. We want to see that, if these people are being caught, what is happening? I mean, on both sides of the divide, are there people are there farmers who are also committing crimes? If they are, then these people should be arrested and prosecuted accordingly. Let Nigerians know that the government is able to protect them. It's not even about, we want you to wield power. No. Nigerians want to know that the government is able to protect us, whether state government or federal government. So something should be done, you know, to protect those who are in these volatile areas. And then for universities, you know, it should be stated that they are not allowed into universities because it is a learning environment. Away from that now, there is also outrage as suspected ritualist cut off girl's breast, and there's another report that there's another ritualist arrested with roasted human parts in Taraba. This is becoming a thing in this period, and you know, just to admonish or advise everyone to be careful. We know that you can never be too careful. It's God who protects, but you know, we should be careful. I don't know how the girl got into the car, but it could be a lift, it could be someone she knows, but we have to be more prayerful and more careful. You can't trust anybody these days. People are looking for ways to make more money, so we have to be careful.
You know, the things that people do to get just about anything is really outrageous. We're still yet to get over the fact that a Uber driver was killed because of his taxi, and the fact that a dispatchman for one of the mobile business platforms was also killed, having gone to dispatch some phones. It's again very sad that we're seeing people being kidnapped, or still getting, every other day you get reports in the papers of kidnaps, of ritual killings. While we're saying, of course, we're happy the security people are probably working so hard to get people who are suspected to have carried out these heinous crimes. It's also important we begin to teach ourselves or get to learn some security beats. You know, what should you do if you find yourself in some situation like that? But like you rightly say, we really couldn't be all careful. We really just need to be conscious of your environment. Even if it's a taxi you're going to be taking, you really need to work consciously these days. And of course, the much you really want to do again is pray. Our safety is only guaranteed by God. So every day we set out, we commit our ways to the end of God, and we're security conscious, basically.
All right, now let's take a break to allow for the morning news. And after the morning news, AM Live will continue. To stay with us.
Good morning and thank you for joining us on Morning News coming to you from New Frontiers Television. My name is Olajumoke Babalola. The news. The president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Reverend Dr. Samson Olashupo Ayokunle, has called on the federal government to prevent the Fulani herdsmen terrorizing Nigeria. Said these in Ado-Ekiti at the centenary anniversary of the First Baptist Church in Ado-Ekiti. Also condemned a statement made by the government blaming the attacks on illegal immigrants. The acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, has congratulated Emmanuel Macron on his election as the next president of France. According to a statement by Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Laolu Akonde, the acting president's congratulatory message was contained in a letter he sent to the president-elect. Akonde quoted Osinbajo saying that he received the news of the election of the 39-year-old Emmanuel Macron with satisfaction. The acting president noted that under successive government, the relations between Nigeria and France had blossomed, even as expressed optimism that the incoming government would further strengthen the bond of friendship between both countries. Professor Osinbajo observed that Macron's election is a source of inspiration, especially for the French people, and portends a greater future in which the French Republic will continue to play its active role boosting relations with Europe, Africa, and the rest of the world. The Lagos State government has ordered vehicle inspection officers to leave Lagos roads. It was gathered that Governor Akinwumi Ambode handed down the directive as a result of public complaint. The governor, who said he would not tolerate any high-handedness in the administration, ordered them out of Lagos roads until further notice. A VIO source, however, said that the governor had told them to leave the roads and go on compulsory retraining on the use of modern technology in order to be humane in dealing with the public, added that the VIO would soon be back on the roads. An appeal court sitting in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, has dismissed the appeal filed by the immediate past governor of the state, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, challenging the constitution of a judicial panel of inquiry by Governor Nyesom Wike to probe him. Amechi was the current Minister of Transportation, and also, among other prayers, challenged his invitation to the Justice Judge Omereji-led panel of inquiry. The panel was set up by the state governor to, among other things, investigate the sale of some of the state assets by the immediate past administration. Justice Simeon Amadi of the state's High Court had earlier dismissed the suit filed by Amechi challenging the right of the panel to probe his administration. The leader of the indigenous people of Biafra and director of Radio Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has said he would never give up his agitation for Biafra. Kanu said this in Enugu when he paid a thank-you visit to the leaders of Pan-Igbo groups, the Eastern Consultative Assembly, and the Igbo Youth Movement. The pro-Biafran activist was received by leaders of the two groups, including the leader of the Eastern Consultative Assembly, Chief Maria Okwo, and the Igbo Youth Movement founder, Evangelist Elliot Uko. The secessionists expressed gratitude for the role played by the two groups, as well as other individuals and organizations in its release from detention. However, he insisted that he would not drop the agitation for the actualization of a Biafran nation. According to him, he was born to champion the pro-Biafran struggle. The leadership of the National Assembly on Monday met with the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, Minister of Labor and Productivity, Dr. Chris Ngige, and organized labor led by the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Mr. Ayuba Waba, on the benefit and outstanding salaries owed public sector workers. This is as the government team disclosed that the government does not currently have the funds to clear the backlog of salaries and other benefits owed workers, running into billions of naira. At the meeting, issues such as salaries arrears, pensions, promotion benefits, transfer allowances, and other allowances were discussed in the tripartite meeting chaired by the Senate President, Bukola Saraki, with Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dugara, in attendance. Ngige disclosed that the federal government does not have enough funds to meet the demands of workers. He, however, stated that the involvement of the leadership of the National Assembly in the ongoing negotiation was applause. We'll take a short break and return with more news. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us at Still Morning News, and on to more news. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, on Monday intervened with another $81.2 million in the invisible and small and medium-scale enterprises segments of the market, following last Friday's injection of $389 million into the retail segment of the forex market. A breakdown of the interventions indicated that the bank provided the sum of $44 million to meet customers' requests for invisibles such as basic travel allowances, personal travel allowances, medical bills, and tuition fees, among others. In addition, the SME segment also received a boost of $37.2 million. The Acting Director, Corporate Communications at the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Isaac Okorafor, confirmed the intervention. Okorafor reiterated his confidence in the ability of the Central Bank of Nigeria to sustain its interventions in the market. However, the Naira was still quoted at 391 Naira to a dollar on the parallel market yesterday. The Naira traded at about 400 Naira to the dollar in deals for investors yesterday, 2 weeks after the new window was opened. Crude oil prices rose on Monday, reversing earlier losses after the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and non-OPEC members said they were considering extending their existing supply deal possibly into 2018, which helped offset the bearish impact of more increases in United States crude output. Global benchmark Brent crude was up 34% at $49.44 per barrel, having recovered from a session low of $48.65. U.S. light crude was up 35 cents at $46.57 a barrel, up from an intra-day low of $45.83. OPEC will meet on May 25 when it is expected to discuss prolonging the cut to the end of 2017, although analysts say a further extension may not be enough. And with this report, we've come to the end of morning news from New Frontiers Television. Please stay with us as AM Live continues just after the news. My name is Olajumoke Babalola. Thank you for watching.
Frontiers Television. You know that one of the things we do on this show is to recognize international days, and today is Europe Day. Just in case you didn't know that, 9th of May is celebrated as Europe Day, and it is celebrated across Europe. Just to give you information about the Europe Day. The Europe Day in Europe Day is annual celebration of peace and unity in Europe. There are two separate celebrations. The first one of them is the 5th of May, which is for the Council of Europe, and the 9th of May, which is for the European Union. So today, on the 5th of May, which was on some days ago, it was a celebration of the Council of Europe to recognize the day that the Council was created. But today, which is the 9th of May, is a celebration of the European Union. But both celebrations look at celebrate the peace and unity across Europe. And the latter, which is the European Union Day, which is the EU Flags Day and has a greater visibility. So the European Union Day is more celebrated than the Day of the Council for Europe. Just to give you a brief background now, 9th of May is celebrated in various forms in most member states of the European Union, and EU candidates of the European and EU candidate countries such as Turkey. Due to the political nature of the day, it sees attempts at teaching people about the European Union and speaking in support of European integration. It's celebrated across member states of the European Union, and European Union candidates like Turkey, those are countries who want to be a part of the European Union, also celebrate the day. And then, this is a day that European Union set aside to enlighten people more about the European Union and about European integration. You do know that one of the issues that Europeans have with the European Union is the fact that it is not transparent. They say they do not understand the structure and the whole system of the European Union, and that was one of the reasons for the call of Brexit. So this is the day that has been set aside to ensure that Europeans understand how the European Union work and to celebrate the integration and the peace and unity of the European Union. The flag as European Union, to continue here, European Union and speaking in support of European integration. The flag as another symbol plays a major role in general celebrations. Despite a preference for 9th of May with the European Union's greater visibility, 5th of May is still observed by some Europeans due to the Council's role in seeking to defend human rights, parliamentary democracy, and the rule of law. In contrast, the Schuman Declaration was merely proposing the pooling of French and West German coal and steel. Since 2003, Ukraine celebrates Europe Day on the 3rd Saturday of May. So that's a different celebration by Ukraine. So there are different, Portugal celebrates it, Ukraine celebrates it, but Ukraine celebrates on a different day. But let's show you a video now, just two videos, just to explain to you how the Europe Day works.